Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of Mowing After Dark. Yet another chaos episode. Chaos theory was in full effect yesterday. I just talking to Rock before the show, probably the craziest day that I can remember since the last week of the 2007 season. I know Daniel Gygax, I see you in chat. You probably don't want to remember that week. I haven't seen Go Black 45. If he joins us, he probably does want to remember that week. It was a crazy week of upsets that led to two teams playing in the national championship that nobody thought was going to play in the national championship. So, before we get started, Rock, this is my co-host Rock and Rant, but I said I would do this last week, and I just want to say this to the best conference in America.
Oh, Lord. 1, 2.
Oh, I got 2 more to do the rest of the show. Chase that.
You should have just taken some of my SEC wine. We would have let you substitute.
Oh, well, I didn't know you could do. Well, they got SEC wine. Oh, that's Paul Feinbaum cheese.
Yes.
That is my cheers to the best conference in America, who currently has 4 playoff teams in the bracket. I say currently because after this weekend, that ain't going to be the case come Tuesday night. Rock and Rant. Okay. How are you doing? Let me start off saying by saying, how are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Yesterday's the kind of day that you're glad you're watching college football from the West Coast because you have your human hours and not trying to stretch that last game to the end with USC, UCLA. But even Colorado State, Fresno State had, conference football playoff ramifications with the Mountain West that I think are interesting, which I'm sure we will get into. But unreal games, crazy all day, scenarios upon scenarios you never thought were going to exist or play out, that they weren't even in most of the articles heading into the weekend with all the conference championship scenarios. They were all under the you have to be high zone, and apparently everything is high.
There you go. Everybody was high yesterday, folks, and I spilled a little whiskey, which is something you never want to do. Never want to do.
Better a little whiskey than crying a lot of tears about your
yeah, that's true.
team.
That's true. I lost a lot of whiskey. I didn't shed any tears yesterday. The Ohio State Buckeyes easily handed Indiana. That being said, I think Indiana still deserves a spot in the playoff. They've only lost 1 game. Interesting note, and you kind of brought this up on Greg's show earlier. If anybody's joining us after watching Greg's show, want to say welcome. Would remind you, if you're not a subscriber yet, please give us a subscribe. That helps us tremendously in the algorithm. If you'd like to become a member of the College Football Mafia family or leave a super chat, you can click the little cash icon down below and do all that good stuff from there. You can also gift memberships if you're feeling generous this holiday season. But yeah, Indiana's strength of schedule went from 108 to 51.
Just by playing Ohio State.
By playing 1 game. And they were in it until the second quarter. Indiana special teams had some issues.
I love that. Wait, they were in it until the second quarter. Until like 25% of the game was over.
They were. It was 7-7 to start the second quarter. So they had a goal line stand against Ohio State, which I don't understand the play call there. I said as much on Twitter. I don't understand why you have a 6'5" quarterback and you don't QB sneak it every time it's less than a yard, but whatever.
Maybe he needs to Google it next time.
Maybe he needs to Google it. Yes, if you did not see the trolling, Ohio State fans were nonplussed with Kurt Signetti's response prior to the game that he's a winner everywhere he goes and they should Google it. So Will Howard did that on the scoreboard after they had an extra newspaper headline saying they Googled it. Ryan Day pulled a Woody Hayes went for a touchdown late in that game that he really didn't need to do, but he said he wanted to leave no doubt that these were the Ohio State Buckeyes. So
yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I think in this the way the playoff era is, even though it's not measured and it's supposed to be factored into anything, like why leave anything for doubt? Like optics matters, right? Public perception, people didn't see the game, writers, all that stuff that somehow could be 2 degrees away from influencing everyone. And like Ohio State's making the playoffs no matter what, right? But Ohio State's not necessarily making the playoffs as a Big Ten champion yet.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
You want to have all of those things, everything you can to be perceptionally like one more spot up. So in case you take a fall, that you don't fall out of 5 to 8, right? So I'm surprised that they didn't go for it in the first play, and I'm glad that they did. For me, that game was, I either wanted Ohio State to truly blow out Indiana, or I wanted Indiana to win. Like the meh zone leaves Indiana up for doubt, except for the SEC showed it doesn't really just mean more later that day. And like you could see the whole conversation about, is Indiana worthy? Even the Paul Feinbaums of the world have like sort of given in that they don't really have a leg to stand on.
Well, we'll see what he says tomorrow when he starts getting SEC callers in.
For sure, when he's doing his SEC show, then I'm sure Arkansas is probably worthy.
Like I said yesterday, Florida became a quality win and a quality loss.
Except for not for Miami.
Except
only if you're in the SEC. If you beat Tennessee, shout out Twitter. If you're Tennessee and you beat Florida by 6 in overtime at home, that's totally awesome. But, Miami beating Florida State by 24 at Florida doesn't really count.
All right, let's say hello to some people. Then we're going to get to the AP Top 25. We're going to break down all the conference championship scenarios. I'm looking at you, Big 12, with 250 possibilities.
256, I believe, exactly.
256, okay. Nathan Campbell says hi. Good to see you, Nathan. Stormy Cyclones in the house. Hi, guys. A Saturday to remember. Yeah, Iowa State's still in the hunt, and they control their own destiny. So congratulations to the Iowa State Cyclones. Thrilling come from behind victory. 4th and 1, and they did a trick play that was incredible. Congratulations to the Iowa State Cyclones. Daniel Gygax, hi everyone. I take it you can use the whole show just going through Big 12 championship scenarios.
We were going to do that, but neither Dustin Hoffman as Rain Man or the guy from A Beautiful Mind were available.
We need to probably, I'll talk to Bomber about this, reach out to the guy from Rankings right now and see if he can somehow set it up to go through all the potential scenarios, because Daniel Gygax will tell you West Virginia's not eliminated from the Big 12 championship game. Bob Swanger says, good evening. Good to see you, Bob. Jose, it's go time. Playoff bids should be capped at no more than 4 per conference. How about we just make 4 automatic qualifiers for certain conferences?
How about you just earn it on the field, and whether it's 1 or 6, that's what matters.
Now, if we'd asked you last week, you'd have been chomping at the bit for 2 ACC AQ.
No, I'm not inconsistent. Okay. I think it's all a crock of crap, and I don't care if Miami gets into the Big Ten tomorrow. Win it on the damn field. Get your qualifiers. Come up with something new and be intellectually consistent. Like, if anything, this weekend proves my point more, right? If somehow Clemson and SMU and Miami get in, which is not out of the realm of possibility, the way things fell and what could fall this weekend, then you'd be basically prearranging into the future where one of those schools might not have a shot, or you'd have to hope that an at-large bid wasn't taken away in an automatic way for like a Notre Dame.
Yeah, and it's hilarious. It's kind of funny how one weekend can change an entire game, outlook for a game. Clemson at South Carolina, they were playing for nothing but pride. That is now essentially almost the potential to be a play-in game into the college football playoff.
Yeah, it's likely to be a play-in, or basically, congratulations, you won, you're the last one out.
Earl Carr is in the house. Good to see you, Earl. Sorry you had a
Earl.
loss this weekend. I'll let Nate do the postmortem on that. Antoine Coates, congratulations on the win this weekend. Probably the craziest finish I think we've had in college football all season. If you didn't happen to catch it live, there was some questionable play calling from Kenny Dillingham down the stretch. Third and goal, he sent his quarterback running, scrambling backwards 20 yards. Fourth and goal, he sent him back further, scrambling, and then he threw it out of bounds. Fans stormed the field. It was chaos in Tempe. And then the officials got together and said, that was intentional grounding because he wasn't outside the tackle box. And there was 1 second left on the clock. And then it took about 24 minutes to get all the fans at least off the field where they could run one more play. BYU with a Hail Mary caught at the 2-yard line, and Arizona State makes a stop. And then the fans rush the field again.
Lost in all the chaos yesterday, Moen, was Dillingham came so close to being the 11th hour, swiping the Mario Cristobal Time Management Award for 2024 away. So close. 2 yards away close.
I think Kenny Dillingham was very close to being a coach that punched an official yesterday. He was, needless to say, heated at the discussion that they were having. Kalen DeBoer got there too. Kalen DeBoer looked like a tomato at the end of that game.
Yeah, he was, and he had a fair issue there. That was a terrible penalty that Alabama had, but they were still down by 20 plus points with not that much time left on that play. It doesn't excuse it, and you never know. We should all know that by this time, but it would have just got him within 14 if I'm not mistaken at that point.
FF18 Buff says, congrats to Kansas. Buffs got manhandled by a hot team. Props where props are due. Listen, Kansas has beat 3 top 25 teams in the last week.
Never done before by an unranked team in 3 consecutive weeks. Ever.
Better late than never. Devin Neal was fantastic. I think he had close to 200 yards in that game. Absolutely awesome performance. Again, Travis Hunter, I think, is the clear Heisman favorite. But if you're not winning the game, guys, don't go throwing up Heisman poses. Right? Way too many Heisman poses this season.
At least Desmond did it when he was winning.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Let's not talk about that, though. Daniel Gagak says, nope, don't remember anything about December 2007. Okay.
Google it.
Maybe if Pat McAfee would take calls, then I would call and ask him about it. He might know something about it. Jose says Georgia Tech. So let's do one more of these. To the best football conference in America, people. The best football conference in America, the SEC. What a fantastic conference.
Oh, yeah.
God bless Greg Sankey. Somebody check on Greg Sankey, can we? Oh, we got a super chat here from our friend Kerry Go Knowles. Haven't seen you in a while, Kerry. Hope you're doing well, sir. Hope you're feeling all right. And if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Rock on Twitter. What's up, Rock and Moen? I'm glad 80 lights had been cast on the SEC mind virus.
Yeah, no doubt that it's the exposure happening. It's a year late. It's pathetic that Jim Phillips before this weekend finally went on the ACC network talking to the converted, but at least he did something. But I think it's the first time I ever heard him advocate for Florida State. It's about 11 months too late. So FSU is the canary in the coal mine on the SEC side of the equation and the politicking that we've seen. But the flip side of it is the crash this past weekend was awesome.
Yeah. Kerry, again, if you need anything, dude, don't hesitate to reach out. Appreciate the super chat, sir. It is much appreciated. If anybody is interested and didn't catch it on Friday, I went on a little bit of a rant towards the SEC. It was calm and professional, as all my rants are. And indeed, it was very family friendly. But yeah, it's SEC.
I feel for them. That's why I made the gift box.
Yeah.
That's why you can take care of your SEC friends with a little bit of wine and cheese for the holidays.
Yes. And best conference in America, guys. Let's hear it for the SEC, the best conference in America. Oh, man.
You know what? No one can ever say that you're not a man of your word, Melvin.
Yes. Unfortunately, I will not be this drunk next Sunday because I don't think the SEC is going to have many teams in the college football playoff brackets
Hey,
this week.
Just remind everyone what you're doing, since not everybody was here last week.
Okay, if you didn't tune in last Sunday, we have made an arrangement for Moen After Dark as well as the Big Ten Mafia show to honor the best conference in America, the Southeastern Conference. I will have a shot for it's actually a double shot. They're 50 cal shot glasses. They're doubles. I will have a shot for every one of the best conferences in America's team that are in the playoff bracket. This week there are 4. I have a feeling next week I'm going to be drinking a lot less whiskey. And on Monday's show, tomorrow's show, when I do Big Ten Mafia with my friend Sergeant Pickles and Becky Go Huskies, for every Big Ten team, I will do a double shot. I've got a feeling that I'm still going to be doing 4 shots next Monday. Not so of the best conference in America, the SEC. Tawtown Hawk says, Mo, and I feel like 3 calls would be appropriate for the 3-week heater Kansas is on. And by the way, I just want to not put any superstition in anybody, but if you've watched the Big Freakin' Friday show the last 2 weeks, this is the sound you heard at the end of it. I'm not taking credit for it, but I'm just saying, I'll tune in on Friday. We might play that again going out.
Freaking Kansas and the Gators are like the chaos agents of college football this season.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. What's wrong with North Carolina State is I fell in love with them at the start of 2024 season.
You were listening to Justin way too much, man.
I'm trying to remember who I picked in the ACC. I think I picked Clemson. Clemson still has a shot at it, technically. So
they still technically have a shot. I know that I'm like currently in our big CFP Mafia competition. I have 3 of the 4 number 1 seeds correct at the moment, but that doesn't mean that they'll be correct next week. You still have, you have 2 that are still possible with the
Big
little
Ten,
flip.
Yeah, which I actually called the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State would be looking to avenge a loss. But that does not mean we should look past the team up north this weekend. Talking to you, Ohio State. But speaking of results, let's take a look at our picks for the week 13. We announced our picks on the Big Freakin' Friday show, which airs every Friday at 7 p.m. here on the channel. Good week for me. Probably the best week of the season for me. I finished 6-2. My only letdowns were I did have Colorado over Kansas, and I took Virginia over SMU. I don't know.
So did I.
I think that's why I took Virginia over SMU. I figured, well, Rock must know something.
I thought I knew
ACC
something.
guy. But yeah, Rock finished 3-5, but he is still in the lead with 57-47. Then we've got Becky came in at 5-3. She moves up to 55-49. Bomber went 3-5 as well, so he did not get the ground he wanted on him. He is at 54-50. Pickles is right behind him. Finished 4-4 this week. He's at 53-51. While Duke finished 4-4, he's 51-53. And I need a strong finish if I've got any shot. So I don't have any shot though, guys. So if you want to play some bets,
we have 2 weeks, right? We have this upcoming games and the playoff, the conference championship weekend, right?
Yes, we will do 8 conference games this weekend, and then we will do every FBS conference championship game, and that'll determine who wins. And we will have a tiebreaker, and I've decided the tiebreaker will be the total points in the SEC championship game. Whoever may be playing in the SEC championship game, because nobody in this house has because we're just terrible fans and we don't support the best conference in America.
Mocking aside, I still think it's the best overall conference. I also just concurrently think it's overrated this year.
I think once teams could start paying people and Nick Saban left, I think that's part of the reason Nick Saban left. Nothing to level a playing field like money, guys. So, all right, we got another super chat here from our buddy Earl Carr. Hey, Moen, I called it on Friday. I said BYU would lose to ASU, and I'm calling my shot now. BYU loses at home to Houston, finishes the regular season 9-3. I talked a little bit, Nate. We have a group chat on Twitter, and we were talking during the games yesterday. And I told Nate, you're not getting rid of A-Rod. They're going to point to that SMU game and say that's why they can't get rid of A-Rod. So if you're hoping for that, keep on hoping. I don't think that's going to happen, Earl. They may lose to Houston Cougars at home, but I mean, I think they were pretty much one of our bottom teams if we go back to our preseason selections in the Big 12.
They absolutely were. Then again, so is BYU.
Yeah. So, I mean, but that's what I'm saying. Look at BYU. Even if they finish 9-3, you have to count that as a success.
Yeah, for sure.
Count it as a success. So,
yeah, let's take Earl's thing. Everyone call your shot for the one game that you think is going to be an upsetting the apple cart. For me, I think USC is going to beat Notre Dame. But I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks in the last week of the regular season, the one game you're calling your shot on.
For me, the one that terrifies me is the game. Jesus, Ryan Day, go out there, get that team fired up. If you got to bring Urban in to get them fired up, do that. If you got to do some kind of sinister incantation and bring Woody Hayes back to do it, please do that. Just do not lose to that team up north this season. For the love of
what happens
God.
if that? What happens if that happens? Other than nothing,
Ryan Day better win the national. Ryan Day better win the national championship. I mean, that's the only way he's keeping his job. We're not going to sit through another John Cooper situation. And I know a lot of Penn State fans were giving me crap on Twitter and on the YouTube comments this weekend. I said Friday night, James Franklin is not the man for Penn State. I think yesterday just showed you why. They were double-digit favorites over Minnesota. They won by 1 point, and I think I honestly believe PJ Fleck could have won that game. I don't understand being down 4 and going for a field goal. I understand he's a disciple of Jim Tressel, and that's how Jim Tressel would play it. But Jim Tressel isn't coaching football anymore, and there's a reason why. All right, let me go ahead and pull this up here. Thank you again, by the way, for the super chat, Earl Carr. Thank you for the super chat, Kerry Go Knowles. I owe you guys some Sounders, and we'll start with the Jets legend.
I couldn't care less about the team struggling.
And Jack.
Whoa, Nelly!
Moen, I had the one day that I didn't have to think about the Jets because they were in a bye week. Even the morning shows didn't talk about that useless team of mine, but you wiped it out at 7:25 East Coast time, and now I
had this weekend circled on my calendar. I said this is a 1 week the Bengals will not disappoint me. I was waiting for him to find a way to tell me there was an injury or something. Got another super chat here from our friend Earl Carr. Moen, Ohio State is currently a 20.5 favorite against that team that will remain nameless. I don't care. It's a rivalry game, guys. It is not something. Listen, you think that team up north, this is a game that would get them bowl eligible, I believe. They're looking to beat the Buckeyes. So Buckeyes cannot overlook them. Have to be ready to play them. Have to be ready to give it all. Pull everything out of the playbook you can. Throw a kitchen sink out there on the field. Do whatever you need to do. Thank you for the super chat again, Earl Carr. Let's do a little more Keith Jackson for you. If it'll play.
We're gonna play football. Yippee!
That's right. We're gonna play football. Yippee!
Hey Mo, let me throw a conundrum thing up there because I know the answer before I forget to come back. What happened there? My screen just went nuts. let's see. There we go. So does a 2-loss Ohio State play in a big championship game? The answer is no if Penn State wins.
Yes. If Penn State wins over Maryland this weekend, they would play in the championship game. Indiana would not be able to play due to the loss to Ohio State. So, yeah, they would not play in the championship game, but they would still be a high seed in the college football playoff. Although with the way Ohio Stadium's been recently, I don't know that that's necessarily a positive thing. Fans need to get up off their ass and start cheering in there. It's like a retirement home in that damn stadium nowadays. And I understand it's because of the price, but still. Who is giving you crap? Penn State fans can't stand them. Lots of Penn State fans were saying it's they're afraid of what happens to them might be the Phil Fulmer effect, like happened to Tennessee. They get rid of him. They can't find anybody who can do it. But look, we'll see. I mean, he's got a chance. Maybe he pulls some stuff off in the playoffs, and I'm wrong, but I just don't see him being the guy there. All right, let's pull up the top 25 this week. The AP top 25. This is not the college football playoff committee's rankings. We will get those on Tuesday. Number 1, rightfully so, Oregon, 11-0, have not lost a game, have a win over Ohio State. Ohio State, number 2. And I will say this is rightfully so. Their only loss was to Oregon on the road by 1 point. And they actually instituted a rule change because of something that happened in that game. Texas, number 3. I have questions about this one. Texas's best win is Vanderbilt. Vandy lost this weekend, so I don't know how good of a win that is, but we'll see. Penn State's only loss was to Ohio State. They have had close games. I mean, obviously this weekend against Minnesota, that was a very close. That game was way closer than it should have been. Way closer than it should have been. Notre Dame has looked the part since losing to Northern Illinois University. They absolutely decimated Army. I didn't expect anything less. I will say that about this game. Those uniforms were awful. I don't know what's up with all the alternate uniforms, but we have to have 50,000 uniforms for a team. But, yeah, graphite gray with gold foil Gothic lettering is not what I think of when I think of Notre Dame.
Yeah. I will say that if I don't know if everybody saw the previews, but the Army-Navy uniforms for the Army-Navy game, those are alternate, and both of them are pretty fire.
Yeah, and I will say this, too, for the Kansas Jayhawks. I really dug that uniform combination. The blue jerseys with the solid red pants was really pretty striking. Kind of had an old school feel to it. I liked it.
And Arizona State, go back to your regular uniforms, but with a version of that metallic helmet from a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, that color fade helmet. That was dope.
With Sparky, and those together, that would be one of the best uniforms in college football.
Yeah, those were awesome. I hope they break those out. Georgia at number 6. They faced a tough UMass team this weekend. Congratulations, Georgia. When you're the best conference in America, I guess, that's how you roll. Tennessee, number 7. Tennessee was on the outside looking in. They are probably now on the inside looking out. Miami comes in at number 8. I have an issue with this. How is it that two-loss SEC teams are ahead of a one-loss ACC team?
I have theoretical issues, but I'm not losing sleep over it, just like I wasn't losing sleep over the CFP rankings. It's perception. It's, Miami's, if you come back and win games that people catch the first half, if it's in the SEC, it's totally okay. And plus I think it's also those controversies about calls, good or bad, whatever way you want to think about them earlier in the season. But as I was saying to Moen on Twitter, I have a mild issue with Tennessee there. I don't really care because I think it all works out at the end. But, common opponents, Miami beat Florida a lot worse on the road than Tennessee did. And Miami's loss is to a higher considered team than Tennessee's loss to Arkansas is. So,
yeah,
whatever.
This is the AP. This isn't the college football playoff. If Miami wins out, they will be a first-round bye and a top 4 seed. The other potential ACC competitor is the SMU Ponies, who the SMU Mustangs, rather, the Pony Express. I mean, they just keep winning, and they keep looking good doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the poll here is probably going to be somewhat reflective of what happens with the college football committee's rankings. And I think what probably happened yesterday, which I definitely didn't think was going to happen heading into the weekend, is assuming, big assumption, because Miami against Syracuse is not going to be the easiest game in my opinion. But if Miami wins, and SMU is already in the championship game, but assuming they win against Cal this weekend, so they both go in with just one loss, I think barring something weird happening, both the winner and loser of the ACC championship game are probably now getting bids.
Then number 10, Indiana falls to number 10 after their loss to Ohio State. Not a good loss for Indiana. They did get dominated throughout that game, offensively, defensively, special teams. Kurt Signetti definitely had some issues following the game, but he was asked at his presser, does he think this knocks him out of the playoffs? And he asked if it was a serious question. So obviously he does not think so. They've got their rivalry game this week, but it's against Purdue. And I think we all consider Purdue the worst team, or the worst Power 4 team in college football at the moment. So
Kurt's like that guy that if he's your coach, you literally love him and every bit of attitude. And if he stays around for a longer time and gets the reputation more, that everybody else will come to despise him. But it'll always be interesting as a coach, because at least he'll say things that are not boring and coach speak all the time.
Boise State comes in at number 11. They struggled mightily against a Wyoming team.
2-8 Wyoming. 2-8, not the Wyoming that we know about from past years. Josh Allen, Wyoming. 2-8 Wyoming.
Yeah, and the argument I heard from Boise State fans was it's hard to go into Wyoming and win. I think
there's more people that live in my zip code than live in Wyoming.
I think 4 of the games that Wyoming lost this year were at home. So obviously it wasn't too hard for those four teams to beat Wyoming at home. Bad news for Boise State. They go on the road next week. I believe it's on the road. They play Oregon State. And Oregon State upset Washington State yesterday in the old Pac-2 Bowl. Listen, don't be shocked if Boise State gets knocked out, guys. Yeah.
I think Boise has a very good chance of losing to Oregon State, and assuming that UNLV beats Nevada in their final game, they'll now go to the Mountain West Championship games since Colorado State lost to Fresno State last night.
Mm-hmm.
UNLV would have to go to Boise because the Mountain West, they've already earned the home version of their championship game. But I think there's a better shot than people think of Boise losing one of their next 2 games. The second one matters more, but both matter in terms of rankings and seedings overall for Boise, even if they get the 5th qualifier.
Yeah, the other thing is, too, if they lose that G5, I mean, Tulane is still right on play for that G5 slot.
Yes, they are.
They will have to play Army, I believe, in the AAC championship game. I believe that's a lock.
That is correct. That's locked in. I think that was the first conference championship game to be locked in.
So if they both went out this week, 1-loss team versus a 2-loss team in the championship game, that is the best news for the Big 12 right now is for Boise State to lose this weekend. So you've all got to root for not only your teams to win in the 256 potential options, you guys need to root for Boise State to lose. Mike Drake is saying that's at Boise State, so it's on the Smurf turf at Boise State. I was mistaken. Apologies. But, yeah, I actually kind of like Oregon State in that game. I think that's going to be a tough out for Boise State. So Big 12 fans, Arizona State fans, Iowa State fans, BYU fans, Colorado fans, you've not only got to worry about yourself winning, you got to worry about Boise State losing if you want that first round bye. You're probably not going to get on the road or get a home game in the playoffs. You'll be on the road. So best situation for you is Boise State loses and you have a convincing enough champion to get that number 4 seed. Rounding out the top 15, you've got Alabama, Arizona State, which moved up quite a bit. Congratulations to the Sun Devils. Ole Miss, who tumbled after a disappointing loss to a Florida team that is now a quality win and a quality loss in the best team in America, best conference in America, excuse me. Oh. Then you got South Carolina, the Iowa State Cyclones, the Tulane Green Wave, the BYU Cougars, Texas A&M, who lost a heartbreaking 4 overtime game. Most of the people on the East Coast were probably in bed while the time that one ended. That was a hell of a game. A&M took the lead late. Auburn came down, tied the game up, went to overtime, ended up going 4 OTs in that game. Hell of a game. UNLV, 21, fighting Illini at 22. The Colorado Buffaloes slipped to 23 after their disappointing performance against the Kansas Jayhawks. Missouri is still somehow in the top 25.
Did anybody watch football?
I guess Greg Sankey called in a favor or something. The Army Black Knights dropped to 25 after getting the doors absolutely blown off. Did we skip over Clemson? I apologize. Clemson's at number 12. And Clemson is still in the hunt for a playoff spot. They are not eliminated, guys. They've got a chance to win the ACC championship and do me proud and make my pick right. But let me pull that off there, and I will go ahead and pull up these playoff scenarios that we have, just so you guys can see how many great playoff matchups there are. All right. Let's start here with the ACC. SMU has clinched their berth in the title game. Congratulations to the SMU Mustangs. You got into the ACC this year by questionable means, but you are going to the first title game in the conference. Congratulations. Go expansion. It occurred to me that every one of the A4 might have a expansion team inside their conference championship game this year.
It's entirely possible.
Entirely possible.
And
Miami.
Just 3 weeks ago, everybody was worried about the ACC being the most convoluted one, and it turned out to be the simplest.
Miami can clinch with a win at Syracuse. Syracuse is not an easy out. Thankfully, they have they've got Kyle McCord up against them, so the Miami defense might actually get a couple turnovers in this game. Clemson would need Miami to lose to Syracuse, and they would need to beat South Carolina to secure their spot. Correct?
They do not. No, they just need Miami to lose. It doesn't matter if they get blown out by 1,000 because it's not a conference game.
Okay.
They need to beat South Carolina to give themselves
into the playoffs.
If Miami doesn't lose, right?
Okay.
But in terms of if Miami loses, then the game itself is irrelevant. They would control their own fate in the championship game.
Big Ten, Oregon is confirmed. Obviously, they've still got to play Washington this weekend. But win, lose, or draw, or anything that happens, they're going to Indianapolis. Ohio State needs to beat that school up north. In order for Penn State to go, they need a win over Maryland, and they need Ohio State to lose. In order for Indiana to go, guys, they need Ohio State and Penn State to lose. Big 12. No team has clinched yet. If a four-way tie at 7-2 between Arizona State, BYU, Colorado, and Iowa State occurs, Arizona State and Iowa State would advance to the title game based on tie-breaking rules. The Big 12 tells CBS Sports there are over 250 possible combinations of 9 different teams that would meet in the conference championship game. Hold on, we will get into this. SEC, Georgia's locked up a spot in the SEC title game for the 4th consecutive year. Congratulations to the Georgia Bulldogs. And the 7th time in the last 8 seasons. Here we go. Expansion Texas controls its own destiny in its first SEC season and can secure a spot with a win against number 15 Texas A&M. The Longhorns are currently favored by 7.5 points. That is now dropped to 6.5, by the way. Likewise, 3-loss Texas A&M can keep its CFP hopes alive by beating Texas. If it does so, it will make the SEC championship game to face Georgia, where it can jump from off the bubble to first-round college football playoff bye if it takes the Georgia Bulldogs out.
And then you got, with that one alone, you have, quarterback questions for Texas. I personally think A&M's going to win that game. And then you could have a scenario where A&M and Georgia play. A&M loses as the SEC conference champion. Loser has 4 losses. And then the playoff committee's got a whole other question they have to deal with. And a whole other network propaganda thing about like how 4 losses just means more in the SEC.
There you go. It just means more losses. Talking about group of 5, there's only 2 that are really fundamental here, and that's the American Athletic Conference. Army and Tulane have both secured their berth to that. And then the Mountain West, Boise State has secured its 8th title game appearance, a conference record. Colorado State advances with a win over Utah State and a UNLV loss to Nevada. UNLV gets in with a win over Nevada and a Colorado State loss. If both win, the higher-ranked team in the final CFP rankings will advance. If both lose, results-based computer metrics will decide.
And right now, UNLV is in the rankings.
Right now, UNLV would go to the conference championship game in that scenario if they both win. If you remember, UNLV is the team that has held Genty to the fewest amount of yards in a game this season. So, again, not a favorable matchup for Boise State. So let's take that off the screen and let's go ahead and let me pull up all the Big 12 scenarios that there are. Quite a few. Like you said, 256.
Absolutely insane. If you think about, you've already played 13 weeks of a schedule.
Yeah, that's small. Let me see if I can make that a little bigger here. All right. 2-team tie scenario. The 2 tied teams at 7-2 will be the championship game participants. In other words, if Iowa State and Arizona State win, they will be in. 3-team tie scenarios. Colorado loss, Arizona State versus Iowa State. Arizona State loss, Iowa State versus BYU. Iowa State loss, Arizona State versus BYU. BYU loss, if Texas Tech defeats West Virginia, then if Baylor beats Kansas and Cincinnati beats TCU, Colorado versus Iowa State, otherwise Colorado versus Arizona State. If West Virginia defeats Texas Tech, Arizona State versus Iowa State. The 4-team tie scenario, all 4 win. Arizona State versus Iowa State. 4 teams who are entering 5-3 this week, they must win and see at least 3 of the 4 6-2 teams take a loss. 256 possibilities here, guys. 256. Big 12, I kind of touched base on this on Friday, but I think having too much parity is hurting that conference. I think you need to have a giant at the top of the conference for everybody to aspire to. This is not going to be good if it's not Iowa State and Arizona State in that conference championship games, guys.
Well, the one thing the Big 12 did lead, whether you picked the right teams at the top, which a lot of us did not because of Utah and Oklahoma State. But the one thing everyone said is that it's going to be carnage, and it's been carnage plus, just not necessarily the carnage in the order that we expected it to be. But it has been like the most wild conference to play. And in case you want to play with scenarios, assuming the site doesn't crash, I just posted a link to a simulator that you can play with all the different modelings. If you want to figure out how to get your team, West Virginia, whoever it might be, into it, you can choose all the different winners and it will spit out the results specifically. It's in the chat right now.
Yeah, for any fan of a 5-3 team, it's going to be like you're playing a parlay this weekend, guys. You're going to have to pull for a win and then watch the games. I want to say that I think of all the top 4 teams in the Big 12, I don't think any of us picked them in our top 5. I think we had Kansas State, Kansas, West Virginia, and that kind of slot.
Utah. Yeah, Utah. Like Utah. I think there was some Iowa State in the top 3 or 4.
Okay.
But Kansas was there for sure for some people. I know I had Utah as my number one pick, and that didn't work out too well. I'm pretty sure you did too.
All right. Well, we're going to jump back to your questions and comments here, guys. Keep them rolling in here. We will get to all of them, even if they're ones we don't agree with. I'm talking to you, Roll Tide Roll. Kerry Gonal says, I never have my glasses on to double spell check everything before I send messages. Don't worry about it.
But yet we still understand you every time.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Towtown Hawk says, Oklahoma Joe's barbecue wings from the Peanut Sports Bar, Blueberry Moscow Mules, and a top 5 all-time Kansas game atmosphere experience. Chef's kiss, KC, I can't quit you.
The only thing I had an issue with that game was nothing about the game. Is I just don't understand why the Chiefs couldn't keep their logo off for the day. Has a school who plays in a stadium that constantly has Miami Hurricanes playing one day and Dolphins playing the next. They managed to at least do that logo part so that you can just have only your branding on. But it was a pretty awesome, and it sounded like an awesome atmosphere there.
Yeah, I will say this. Congratulations to the officials across all conferences. You were all equally terrible yesterday. Big Ten officials, SEC officials, ACC officials, Big 12 officials. Some terrible calls.
What was your worst call of the day? Was it the one in the Auburn call, the Alabama call, the one of
it was the
others?
I think it was the Auburn call was pretty rough, but the Alabama call where they said Ryan Williams did not get the touchdown because he covered up a receiver when he did not cover up a receiver. And the ref threw it from like 10 yards down the field. He wasn't even able to see down the line laterally. That was rough for me. But
it was like 5 seconds after, which is that kind of call is usually made like within a second. And you see the flag fly.
Yeah, it's we got to figure out how to get these refs under control. Argraw, good to see you, Argraw. I like how when a team loses in another conference, they're bad. But if the SEC loses multiple, it's because the conference is just that good.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for people to take a look because I did this yesterday.
Best conference in America.
If you look in the ACC conference as an example, like look at the Big 12, right? You look at all the teams you have that are 7-2 in conference, variations of that out of the conference. All the teams that are 5-3, there's a bottom half, so you clearly have a top echelon for all the grief the ACC gets. And to be clear, I despise the ACC as a conference, but I also think you should always be fair in your judgment. You have 7 or so teams that are going to finish, 8-4 records or above potentially the way things are shaking out. The conference still has a chance heading into this weekend to have a better out of conference record against the SEC. They already have clinched that against the Big 10 and Big 12. So, the Big 10 has one of the most, 4 of the top 5 seeds currently in the playoff. So, every conference has their own merits, and that's why you just want to judge them on what actually happens on the field as best as possible. And you can't do this, well, my win is good and yours isn't against the same team crap. That's kind of weak.
And speaking of which, Illini Ted, but they still only play 8 conference games, LOL. Yes, I heard from several SEC fans this week, and they were most pleased with my rant. They informed me they would not play a 9th conference game for free and how they're looking out for FCS opponents by giving them that big payday. So, best conference in America, guys. Best conference in America.
Well, you know what? I would buy that argument except for 2 things. I think it's great when the P4, by the way, is playing FCS schools because it does fund, whether it's historically HBCUs or a lot of these schools where like that $1 million or $1 million plus is the difference on survival. And I think that's great. But you can't say that at the same time you're trying to do a scheduling agreement, right, to basically prevent all of those. And the SEC is alone among all of the conferences of conveniently scheduling one of those slots right this past weekend or the weekend before in the middle of the season, giving them like essentially a virtual bye heading into the bowl season. Most of the other conferences, with a few exceptions that are just usually scheduling quirks, not intention, put those games in the beginning of the season. There's definitely an advantage to having a little bit of a rest day while still playing a game in week 12 or 13.
Arningad, good to see you, Arningad. Haven't seen you in a bit. The Nebraska disease, firing 9, 10-win coaches. You're absolutely right. I don't disagree with you, but I think Penn State, I think they're a better program. I think they've given Franklin enough chances. Again, he's going to have to win a playoff game. Can't get it done against Ohio State. You're not going to be able to get it done in the Big Ten. So, I mean, that's great. You can perennially be a 9 and 10-win team, but if you're not competing for championships in the conference, got to move on. Illini Ted says Indiana or Penn State would pass Ohio State to the championship game unless they both lost as well. Yes. They need an Ohio State loss, let's not even speak that into existence. We got Joaquin Morales coming off a big win for our Sun Devil friend. Hey, Moen, Rock and Rant, and CFM fam, smash that like button. Kansas Jayhawks, check. Utah, check. BYU, check. The Ohio State University. Go Devils. Yeah, Joaquin, I think that would not be a good draw for you. I don't think I would be a good draw for you in the playoffs, but I would like to see the Sun Devils make it to the playoffs. I have picked against them every game this season, I think, and they've always thwarted my picks. I picked for them this week, and I won one. So
flashback a year and wonder like what Arizona would be saying if they told you in a year from now we're not going to be relevant for the season and Arizona State might be going to the playoff.
Yeah, especially with Fafita and McMillan coming back. All right, we got a fan of the best conference in America here. To you. Roll Tide Roll. Moen, Heather Dinich says Bama can still get the 12th spot. And Shannon Sharp on his show said, don't get it twisted. It's about ratings, and Bama at 12 against Notre Dame and South Bend is better than any else. Heather Dinich works for ESPN, who is the only media partner for the SEC.
And the CFP.
And the CFP. She's our CFP correspondent. Shannon Sharp. Are you talking about his YouTube show? Because, I mean, outside of the Cat Williams episode, I really haven't watched it.
He gets a ton of views. It's one of the bigger shows on YouTube at this point, for sure. But he's not talking. He's talking about ratings, not necessarily earning it, right? He's saying politics there.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going based on ratings, you could take pretty much every Big 12 team out of it, other than Colorado. I mean, if we really want big ratings, we'd have to put Colorado in.
Right, and if we're talking about ratings, then you're taking out Indiana, you're taking out SMU, right, as possibilities, because they're just not ratings juggernauts.
Illini Ted says, from what I saw on BTN, Oregon is the only team that clinched. Yes, another expansion team. And the other three all still have a chance, but Ohio State is the only one that controls their own destiny. If Ohio State loses at noon, Penn State does control their own destiny. But yes, they need Ohio State to lose that game. So when the SEC still gets 4 in and win the Natty, how hurt are you guys going to be?
Not hurt. We just want things to be honest and stop crying before the playoffs are even done. Really? Like, that's all. Like, if the SEC deserves 5 teams in, I don't have any problem with it. What I have a problem with is like a whole propaganda thing starting 3 weeks ago before the games are played and just crying like it's a baseball game and it's a league of our own.
And what I have a problem with is your conference plays 8 conference games and schedules an FCS opponent before rivalry week. If you were such a great conference, you wouldn't be afraid to play 9 conference games and you wouldn't schedule an FCS opponent the week before rivalry week. Illini Ted follows up that says Alabama that got rolled by Oklahoma might as well put Florida State as well. Man, took a shot at Florida State there. They also get good TV ratings.
They're getting a lot of strays this year.
Roll Tide Roll says Florida had 21 players out against Texas, QB included. Florida made a QB change, and they've been better ever since. QB makes a difference, a la SMU.
No arguments there.
Not making an argument there. The point is, they were now they are a quality win, quality loss team in the SEC. everybody was saying it's not a quality win for Miami to go in there and absolutely decimate Florida at home. But it's a quality loss for Ole Miss to go in there and get beaten by Florida by a touchdown. So, I mean, again, Towtown Hawk with the Kansas beat BYU, who beat SMU. Therefore, Kansas should be slotted as an at-large bid to the playoff.
Can we do that for the Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, who lost to Georgia Southern?
Georgia Southern, yeah. Transitive property doesn't work, Towtown Hawk. But
it doesn't
Kansas,
work either direction, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work. But good for Kansas. They've come back really on fire. Hottest team. Like, I don't want to be the team that plays them in a bowl game. You would think Boise wouldn't have as much issue with the elevation at Wyoming like other teams have, but whatever excuse is needed, yeah, it's just that's the excuse I've heard run with is strange things happening in Wyoming.
They have not looked good the last 3 or 4 games. They've won, and you got to give them that credit, but that's the only reason why I think that they're possibly on upset alert the next 2, just because they haven't been consistent. And it's the same reason why I can't sit there and say with a straight face that I'm 100% confident that Miami's going in and beating Syracuse, right? Like, I can be honest with that, and other fans should be too.
Tony Washington says Nebraska played great. They did enough to beat Wisconsin, but Wisconsin did secure the commitment of a 4-star quarterback this weekend. So I know that makes Luke Fickell happy. They have an offensive coordinator opening. We will see who ends up there. Conundrum says the Corn Dogs are bowl eligible and happy. They've still got one more game to play, Conundrum. And if you don't take that team seriously, that's going to be a 7-win Nebraska team. And then he follows it up by saying Hawkeyes retain the Heroes Trophy on Friday at Kinnick. I think I might actually like Nebraska in that game.
Back on Wisconsin real quick, that quarterback that they got, ironically, to bring it back to Florida State, that was also the guy I think a lot of FSU recruiting guys were saying was the possible replacement for their quarterback who they had lost a week or 2 ago. So him going to Wisconsin is an interesting development in the recruiting front.
Previous Michigan commit, so he's not a nobody. Baby Lion says, Jesus loves you. Have a blessed day. Thank you. You do the same. Tony Washington Conundrums, are you guys playing a linebacker at quarterback against Nebraska? Good question. We don't know who's playing quarterback yet. Hummus Hero, a fellow Buckeye. Remember at the beginning of the season, people were debating if Howard was an upgrade over McCord. Fast forward 3 months, and Howard is number 2 nationally in QBR, and McCord has nearly a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Yeah, that was bolstered by that Pitt game where he threw 5 picks. And I think 3 of them were pick sixes. So,
if I'm not mistaken, he is leading or is close to leading. He's definitely leading the ACC in passing yards. I don't know if nationally and clearly he does not have the receiving talent around him that Ohio State does. But I don't know if Ohio State receiving talent at Syracuse could have caught some of those passes that he threw into the opposing arms.
Yeah, I'm very happy with Will Howard as our quarterback. I just wish if it's a half yard to gain, just tell that dude to fall forward. Come on. Like 6'5". Tony Washington says, damn Gophers.
So close to complete and utter chaos.
Listen, you're down 4. You can't go for 3 and hope you get the ball back. You got to go for it.
That reminds me of Kentucky earlier in the year.
Yeah, when they played Georgia. Yeah. Hummus Hero says McCord's touchdown interception ratio actually has gotten much better since that Pitt game. My bad, Kyle, if you were in the chat. Yeah, Kyle's probably not in the chat. Towtown Hawk has a logo explanation. Clark Hunt is El Cheapo. Mike Brown is cheap.
Sounds viable. Clark Hunt's frugal then.
Yeah, he's frugal. SEC officials win the idiot award for the consecutive calls in the Auburn game. Miss a blatant hold one play, throw a flag on a completely non-existent PI the next. Yeah, that was pretty bad.
That holding call was, I mean, it was almost like a meme.
Yeah, I mean,
the way he released it, like it was a hot potato, baby burn.
Yeah, he was almost giving that kid a wedgie through his back collar. So I don't understand that one. But listen, there's bad refs in every conference. We found that out. If there was only a way we could have a supervisory committee like the NCAA to overview all officials. Keep Chopping says West Virginia's still alive. All they need to do is find $100 bill on a sidewalk, hit the Powerball, marry a supermodel, and get Neil Brown to coach a good game.
I will give it to Keep Chopping. He throws elbows regardless of outcome on a given week.
Rutgers, Rutgers is probably not real happy with Greg Schiano right now. If you guys did not catch that game, I know most people didn't. It was up against the Ohio State-Indiana game. Schiano called a timeout to freeze the kicker. The kicker went ahead and missed that kick. Following kick, he did not miss. So, and Illinois defeats Rutgers.
Well, didn't they go for they elected not to kick it and they scored a touchdown?
I believe so. You might be right. I was watching Ohio State, Indiana. So I was just following the
Correct me if I'm wrong, Keep Chopping, but I think that's what happened. He iced them, which is not proven statistically to do anything other than to burn a timeout, and gave them enough time to rethink it, and they went for it and instead scored a touchdown.
40-yard touchdown pass, Illini 10 confirms. I apologize, Illini 10. Does Notre Dame lose to Trojans eliminate the Irish? No.
I think it does. I think if they lose to if they have the worst loss of anybody in the CFP ratings, right? And then they lose to another unranked team and they have 2 losses. I guess it depends upon, what else plays out next week, but I think they're certainly in jeopardy and they're clearly not getting a home game.
It's a rivalry game. I think they'll say, oh, it's a rivalry game. That loss shouldn't be counted as heavily against them, but we'll see. I think the Notre Dame brand is good enough that if we're going to allow a 2-loss team in, it would probably be Notre Dame. Do you guys have any idea who offered the Washington State quarterback over $1 million and he's not even in the portal yet?
I guess I heard about that offer, but I guess I misread it, Stormy Cyclone. I thought that he was getting a $1 million offer to stay at Washington State, but I might have just misread it and glanced over and just saw Washington State $1 million. But I did read the general thing.
Everybody is now pissed at that team up north. They have set the market so high on quarterbacks. Everybody's going to be asking for at least $11,001 this offseason.
All you need is to have a guy worth like $250 billion gazillion dollars, like Larry Ellison, and you two can buy anyone you want. He makes Phil Knight look poor.
Illini Ted asks a great question. So is the Pac still on track to finish out their 8th or more full member next month? And Mountain West seems to be on hold with FCS football only schools waiting on the courts. I do. This answer is not going to make Pac fans very happy. I have been told Sacramento State is number 8. They will get a grace period of 1 year, which will allow them to move up to FBS within the calendar year needed to preserve the Pac-12 as a conference. I know that's not what people want to hear. The Pac-12, I think, played this very, very poorly to start out with. I think they took it as a given that Tulane, Memphis, and University of South Florida were going to accept their invite. When that didn't happen and they went back to the Mountain West, they let the Mountain West shore up their defense. And here we are. They ended up poaching Utah State, but they were unable to poach Air Force and UNLV. So there you go. That's what I've heard, guys. That could change. We'll see. But Sacramento State has apparently raised north of $60 million, which will all be committed to athletic development, including a new stadium and potential other things. So we'll see.
I think you're on point there, Mo, and I think that's the reason why you're hearing the Pac-12 trying to go and get their TV deals shored up, because that way they can at least come back to potential schools, whether it's Sacramento State or still trying to aim higher with an actual dollar amount. And I'm sure their TV deals are basically like, here's what we'll give you if you get team A, B, and C, or add 1, 2, or 3 teams, and they'll just have a Chinese restaurant menu of options. And that's why they'll be able to go back to schools with something firm in hand.
Heartbreak 25. Penn State has won 10 games in 3 straight seasons for the first time in 40 years without stacking top 5 classes and an 8-figure NIL collective. Hashtag but fire Franklin. How many Big Ten conference titles have they won?
Yeah,
that'd be my question for you.
Like, what is it you want your program to do? Like, do you want to compete for the titles or not? Like, and it doesn't mean it's not possible, but that's, I think, the question is like, where do you think this, are you cool with the high floor, but not necessarily as high of a ceiling? Like, is that what you want? Like, I have a different question because I really don't know the answer other than having family that went to Penn State that's not like active in booster zone of Penn State is one of the biggest, most legendary schools in terms of alumni base and an alum network across the country. Like, why isn't your NIL collective in the upper tier to give you an 8-figure NIL? Because Penn State would be one of the teams I would assume would have an 8-figure NIL program.
Yeah, and again, if PJ Fleck is not a super conservative Jim Tressel guy, Penn State might have lost that game yesterday, and they would not be at 10 wins. So my issue is, what do you expect? I mean, if you're happy with 10 wins and not winning the conference, keep him. But I think if you want to win the Big Ten Conference and compete for national championships, he just and take this from an Ohio State fan, he reminds me of John Cooper. He can recruit like hell. He can get the players in there. They play well, but they consistently lose to Ohio State. And they don't compete for Big Ten championships enough. They don't. I mean, they did go to the Rose Bowl. They did beat Utah. Congratulations on that win. That was a fantastic win for James. But look, I expect more out of Penn State. I don't know. And I understand the Joe Paterno thing and all that goes with it. I just look, if you're happy with what he's doing for you, keep him. Worst call was the late dirty hit on Shadur Sanders by Kansas number 45. Then Shadur gets stepped on, and all people can talk about is him pushing a ref. Yes, that was a dirty hit. We talked about this a little bit on the Big Ten Mafia show last week. Similar hit happened in the Ohio State game against Jeremiah Smith. Rolled his ankle. It's dirty players. I mean, there's nothing you can really do. Jose says, always love the flailing arms of the punter faking high snap. There you go. Penn State ranks 11th in the country in NIL. I would rather win championships. However, I don't see anyone out there to replace James with. Fair enough assessment, but I think you at least have to look. I think even if you don't do it publicly, you need to undertake a look at a potential replacement.
If Penn State's NIL ranks 11th, I would assume that's an 8-figure NIL.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's still bad blood at that university over the whole Paterno thing. There are Paterno lovers who are upset that they removed the statue. I completely understand that part of, getting those boosters on board, but we'll see. Tony Lawson,
are you Penn State fans though, or are you Paterno fans? Like, ultimately, you have to decide.
Right. Well, that's the thing that they think Paterno did nothing wrong.
Okay.
I am of the opinion that Paterno did everything wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm of the Paterno that Bo Schembechler did everything wrong, and I don't think it's appropriate for Fielding, Yost, or Schembechler to have buildings named after him. Timothy Green, hello, fellows. Just wanted to stop in and say hello and wish everybody good luck next week in their ball game. Yes, hope you're feeling well, Timothy. I know you've been under the weather, as it were. Hope you feel better. Hope you have a good Thanksgiving. I hope everybody here has a good Thanksgiving. We got about 5 minutes left, guys, and we're going to wrap her up here. So any more comments? Let us have them.
I do want to know I got to go back and look to see which of the 256 scenarios put West Virginia in the title game, because that would just be the most confounding thing, right, for a school with a coach under fire, disappointing season, like instantly craziness happens and you're in the championship game.
Ohio State continually loses. The big reputation of being overrated is because OSU is overrated. Ohio State has a national championship in 2014. They have a national championship in 2003. You have to go back to 1993 to make an argument for a Penn State national championship, but realistically, their last national championship was the 1980s. So,
I
understand Ohio
I
State
remember.
overrated because a couple years ago they went in and lost to a Georgia team after a dirty hit against Marvin Harrison Jr. They were the team that played Georgia the closest that season. That same Georgia team went on to beat TCU 66-3, I believe, or 66-7. I'm not saying Ohio State hasn't had bad losses in the playoffs, but Ohio State was in the playoffs. They got there. Penn State couldn't get there. Although I will give Penn State fans this, they deserve to go the year Ohio State got blown out 31-0 by Clemson. I do believe Penn State deserved to go that year. If Ohio State loses to that team up north again, how hot does that seat get? It gets so hot he will need a national championship full of champagne to put it out. No, Tony, he would not get canned. They would wait until the playoffs were over. Great minds think alike. There you go. Hummus Hero says, Heartbreak 25. In the past decade, look at Ohio State's preseason rankings and postseason. They typically finish right around they were projected to. I think you mean overhyped, not overrated. Listen, again, this is just a difference of opinion. I think Penn State's a fantastic team. Love having them in the conference. I think it was the best thing the Big Ten did, expansion-wise, was adding Penn State, even though Notre Dame should have came along as number 12. Look, I just don't I don't think James Franklin's the guy to get it done. Obviously, if Penn State fans and boosters are happy with what he's done, by all means, retain him.
I think it's, Hummus here, you're allowed to think whatever you want. It's your school, it's your team, right? But you have people basically saying, we think you can do better.
Well,
right?
Hummus Hero's an Ohio State fan.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I've seen the logo, but it's missing. But like, that's the point, right? With Penn State is like, we think Penn State can do better. Right. And James Franklin probably has this, this floor that is really good, but like we would expect Penn State fans to want more than that. And what is the evidence that he's going to be the guy that eventually gets you over the hump? Like it's possible, but usually you don't win a national championship at a school if you haven't made that move by the amount of time that he's been there already. It's just not historically the trend.
We've got
Sorry
Lee,
for calling you a Penn State fan, by the way, Hummus here.
As long as you don't call him a fan of that team up north.
No,
Lee, who is a Penn State guy, the big money donors don't want to give to NIL because they feel Joe Paul was done wrong and they won't give until the statue is put back up. Well, then they're never going to give, according to some of the beat right. Yeah, they're never going to give. That statue's not going back up. I'm sorry.
We will not help you cure cancer until
Timothy Green, what do you think? Oh, whoops, I guess got the wrong one there. Ta-Town Honk, Buc-ee's is on the way to Waco. Well, one more road trip. Let's go bowling, KU. Smartest C student ever. Let me tell you something. People from the north who haven't traveled the south, if you have never been to a Buc-ee's, if you see a Buc-ee's on a freeway, stop. It is like a Home Depot-sized store. Filled with stuff.
Turn your GPS on in case you get lost.
Yeah. Have you ever been to a Buc-ee's?
I have.
Yeah. Beaver nuggets and blueberry yogurt covered pretzels.
And 187 pumps.
108. You're right, 187 pumps. But I didn't get gas there. I just got food there. I'm a fat guy. I like the food. Illini Ted, we'll make this the last question. We're at an hour and 15 minutes. We got to get out of here, guys. Is the Toledo coach still your top candidate for Purdue? I don't know. He slipped. Toledo has really slipped this year. Miami of Ohio coach, the Ohio University coach, I think are probably good candidates. But at the end of the day, you got to get somebody who's offensive minded. Kevin Wilson just got fired from Tulsa. I'm not going to say go get Kevin Wilson, but get somebody who is at least offensively minded.
And AAC is carnage.
Yeah. So we'll see. Jason Candle's a good coach, but maybe it's just a down year for them. But Purdue has to get somebody who's offensively minded. The defensive coach thing just doesn't work. And then I'll do this one because it's about Buc-ee's. I heard that Kansas City, Kansas is getting a Buc-ee's. Look forward to driving through. If that's the case, for our southern friends, I will also mention Sheetz. If you're in the north and you see a Sheetz, by all means, stop by. Some of the best deli sandwiches you will have in the world. They're fantastic. It does not compare to Buc-ee's. I'll give you that. You beat us at the Buc-ee's versus the Sheetz, but Sheetz is pretty damn good as well. So, all right, Rock and Rant, what's your one for the road, as our friend Sergeant Pickles would say?
Just looking forward to the drama of Tuesday night. Like this college football playoff ranking show, I'm super intrigued to see what happens and to see the drama that falls after it. And then remember, if you have picks and things in different leagues, remember a lot of games on Friday that are normally in those kind of pick things. So make your picks before you have an awesome Thanksgiving. And to everyone who watches this show and all of our shows, hope you guys all have a great Thanksgiving.
Again, I want to say to the best conference in America. I'm pretty hammered now, so we'll stop on that drinking. But yes, to the best conference in America. I want to thank everybody who turned out for the show tonight. We had 70 people watching at one point. I think that was one of our highs. So thank you all for tuning in. If you could give us a like and a subscription, that would be much appreciated. If you want to leave us a comment, feel free to leave that in the comment section. That also helps us out in the YouTube algorithm. I want to particularly thank Carrie Go Knowles and Earl Carr, who generously gave us super chats. It is much appreciated. Thank you guys. I want to say I'm thankful for the community we have built here at Mowing After Dark. I am thankful for my co-host Rock and Rant. I am thankful for this past weekend. I am thankful for hopefully this future weekend. There's going to be some great rivalry games. It's rivalry week. Tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. for the Big Ten Mafia show with myself, Sergeant Pickles, and Becky Go Huskies. Tuesday night at 8 p.m. is the Big 12 Mafia show. We're probably going to do a show on Black Friday. It might just be a short show just giving our picks, but we're going to try and do something for Friday for you guys. And then we might do something this Wednesday as well. But just stay tuned to Twitter. Make sure if you're a subscriber, you have your notifications turned on. For myself, Rock and Rant, if you're traveling this week, please stay safe. Be careful. We love you guys. Have a happy Thanksgiving. We will see you guys next Sunday.